Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. This time we are going to be taking a really close look at Barbara Oakley's Mindshift, break through obstacles to learning, and discover your hidden potential.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and I'm really excited about this one because it's got so many stories of people who have made some really big career changes, and I think there are going to be a lot of good lessons in there for us.
Yeah, I think people will be pretty surprised actually by how much potential for change there is in, well, all of us really, no matter what our background is or what we've done in the past. I think this book kind of, it really challenges those ideas we have about people only having a fixed amount of talent.
Right, right, for sure. I mean, we're going to be meeting a musician who ended up becoming a doctor,
Hmm.
somebody who use their knowledge about online gaming to, to help protect their university, and even a high school dropout who ended up running the successful college.
Yeah, that's a pretty amazing lineup. And every single one of their stories, they offer some really practical advice and insights about how we can, keep learning all our lives and keep adapting to this world that just keeps changing faster and faster.
So let's just jump right into it. The first story that really grabbed me was the one about this guy Graham Keir.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy was a really successful musician. I mean, he was performing at places like Juilliard, like that. That is really, really high level stuff.
Right.
But he decided to just totally change things up and go to medical school to become a doctor.
Wow.
But here's the crazy thing.
Yeah.
This guy hated math and science when he was younger.
Yeah, you would never know that from what he ended up doing.
You'd think that would, make him want to stay as far away from being a doctor as he could.
Right, exactly.
But that's what's so inspiring about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
He shows us that even if you've had, not so great experiences with something in the past, like if you hated math or science in school,
Yeah.
you can actually get over that.
Yeah.
You can overcome those mental blocks
Yeah.
and actually develop a passion for that thing you thought you hated.
For sure. It's like our brains, they're not fixed. We can always keep growing and learning.
Yeah, I was seriously blown away by just how dedicated this guy was. He actually started studying pre-calculus on his, get this, on his iPhone,
Wow.
months before his college classes even began.
That's serious
And
dedication.
he didn't stop there. He also used these memory techniques, like on the memory palace thing. It's where you associate information with really vivid images in your mind.
Yeah, the memory palace technique, it's actually a pretty cool thing. It goes all the way back to ancient Greece. And basically it uses your spatial memory, the part of your brain that remembers places. And what you do is you create these mental rooms in your mind, and then you put pieces of information that you want to remember in these rooms. Interesting.
Like, you could imagine yourself walking through a building that you know really well, and in each room, you put a different part of the human heart.
So if you need to remember, all the parts of the heart for an exam or something,
Exactly. Just walk through your memory palace in your mind, and boom,
it's all right there.
there it is.
That's so cool.
It really makes you think about, all the amazing stuff our brains can do. Right?
Yeah, right. There's just so much potential in there that we don't even tap into. But what I found really thought-provoking was how this guy, Graham, how his musical background, actually helped him when he got to medical school.
Oh, yeah, definitely. All those years of training his ear, through music, that actually made him really good at auscultation, which is, the way doctors listen to your heart and lungs with that stethoscope.
Oh, okay.
His story just shows us that sometimes those past experiences that we have, even if they seem totally random or unrelated, they can become like these secret weapons when we try something new. It's like hidden strengths that you don't even know you have.
Totally. So maybe you should ask yourself, what kind of unique strengths do you have from your past that could, help you in some unexpected way?
That's a really good question. I like that. Okay, so moving on. The next story that really stuck with me was about Claudia Meadows. She was a bus driver who was dealing with some pretty serious depression.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then things got even tougher for her when she had this major setback at work. But Claudia's story is all about how she decided to take charge. She started experimenting with all these different activities to see what could actually help her feel better.
Oh, that's interesting. So like a self-experimentation.
Yeah, exactly. And she was super organized about it. She kept track of everything she tried, even rating how much she thought she'd enjoy beforehand, and then comparing that to how she actually felt afterwards.
Wow. So it was like she was, conducting a science experiment, but on herself.
I know, right? It's really cool. It's like a reminder that we don't have to just sit back and let life happen to us.
Right.
We can use tools like, that self-monitoring to really understand ourselves better and figure out what makes us happy.
I love that. It's so empowering.
And get this, losing her job, which at first seemed like the worst thing ever, actually ended up leading her to a much happier and more fulfilling path.
No way. So it was like a blessing in disguise, kind of.
Yeah, in a way. It forced her to really confront her depression and start making positive changes.
Wow. It really makes you think, How could you take something that seems like a setback and turn it into an opportunity for growth?
It's all about perspective, isn't it?
I think so.
Okay, so now the book kind of switches gears a little and talks about how all this rapid technological change is affecting our careers.
Okay.
And it uses this really interesting analogy of the Comanche Indians.
The Comanches.
Yeah, and how they were so good with horses. So the book argues that computers are like the modern-day horses.
Interesting.
They're changing everything.
Right. Like how we live, how we work, how we connect with each other, everything.
Exactly. And just like the Comanches had to adapt to horses to survive, we need to be embracing these new skills and technologies to thrive in this digital world.
Right, right. I'm following you.
And that brings us to this guy, Ali Naki, who made a pretty big career change from, get this, from golf to marketing.
Golf to marketing.
Yeah. Talk about a switch.
That is a big change.
But the secret to his success was that he learned coding and web development through these things called MOOCs. Those massive open online courses that everybody's talking about these days?
Oh, yeah, the MOOCs. They're becoming pretty popular.
Yeah, exactly. And Ali's story just highlights how important it is to be adaptable and to always keep learning.
Right.
It makes you think, what skills could you be developing to stay ahead of the curve,
It really does. That's a great question for everybody listening out there.
For sure. Now, what I really love about these stories is that they all show us that it's never too late to change direction or learn something new.
Yeah.
And that's what's so cool about the next story about Tanja to be.
Okay.
She was a secretary who ended up using her kind of unexpected expertise in a really valuable way.
Really? A secretary? What kind of expertise could she have?
Well, have you ever thought about how your hobbies or interests, like the things you do for fun, could actually be turned into valuable skills at work?
I guess I haven't really thought about that too much.
Yeah, well, Tanja is a perfect example of that.
Okay.
She was a huge online gamer.
Ah.
And her knowledge of online communities actually became super helpful when her university was getting ready to launch this MOOC about terrorism.
Wow.
Yeah, because she was the one who realized that they could have problems with internet trolls. Like, they hadn't even thought about that.
That's amazing. So they were about to launch this MOOC about a really serious topic, and they didn't even think about the trolls.
I know, right? Crazy, right?
Wow, good for her for speaking up. Her story is a great reminder that we all have skills that we might not even realize are valuable, And sometimes all it takes is the right opportunity, and bam, those skills can shine.
Exactly. It also shows how those, traditional job titles and descriptions can be kind of limiting, Tanja could have just stayed in her role as a secretary, but her passion for gaming led her to develop this expertise that ended up being so important for her university.
Yeah, sometimes you got to break out of those boxes,
Exactly. Thinking outside the box is what opens up new possibilities.
I like that. It makes you think, what kind of unconventional skills do you have that could be helpful in some unexpected way?
Right.
It could be anything, really.
Exactly. Yeah, it really does make you stop and think about all those hidden talents people have.
Right.
And sometimes it's not even just about skills,
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about having the guts to just go for it and defy those expectations. That's what really struck me about Zach Asseri's story. This guy went from being a high school dropout to graduating summa cum laude from NYU.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then he went on to lead this really cool experimental college.
You're kidding. That's incredible.
It's a pretty wild ride, right?
That is quite a journey. From dropout to, academic superstar.
It just shows you that there's no one right way to be successful.
Right, exactly. It throws all those old ideas about what success looks like right out the window.
It really does.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is that online learning played a big part in his journey. And, of course, having some really great mentors in his life.
Yeah, I think people often don't realize how important mentors are.
For sure.
They can offer so much guidance and support, and they can open doors that you might not have even known were there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But in Zach's case, it wasn't just about those positive influences. he was also really impacted by the work of this sociologist named Joan McCord.
Go McCord.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with her work.
Oh, well, she did this fascinating research on, like, the unintended consequences of social programs.
Okay.
Her research showed that sometimes, even when people are trying to help, with the best intentions, those programs can actually end up having some negative effects.
Oh, wow. I see. So even programs that are supposed to be helpful can sometimes backfire.
Yeah. And that really resonated with Zach and shaped his whole approach to education.
That makes sense. It's a really important insight, isn't it?
It is. It reminds it to think critically and
Mhm.
to question those assumptions, even when it comes to things that seem, good on the surface.
Definitely. It's like just because something is well-intentioned doesn't mean it's always going to have a positive outcome.
Exactly. And that's something that we should all be aware of, I think.
Absolutely.
So kind of changing gears a bit, let's talk about a country that's doing some really innovative stuff to get their workforce ready for the future.
Okay, which country?
Singapore.
Oh, Singapore. They're always ahead of the curve.
Right. And the book talks about this guy, Patrick Tay, who's a member of parliament there. And he's really pushing for this idea of second skilling.
Second skilling, what's that?
It's basically about learning additional skills to make your career, more resilient. So,
Yeah.
like, if your main job goes away, you've got these other skills to fall back on.
Oh, that's smart. So you're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Right. And Singapore has this whole tripartite approach where individuals, companies, and the government all work together to encourage lifelong learning.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. So they're really taking this seriously.
They are. And they're ahead of the game in realizing that, just having expertise in one area might not be enough anymore.
Yeah, in today's world, you got to be able to adapt and evolve, right?
Totally. And what's really interesting is this idea of a talent stack.
The talent set.
Yeah, it's like instead of trying to be good at, a million different things, you focus on building a set of skills that work together. So you're kind of like strategically stacking your talents to make yourself more adaptable and valuable to employers.
So it's like instead of being a jack of all trades, master of none, you're a master of a few really key interconnected things.
Exactly. It makes you think, what kind of second skill could I develop to complement my existing strengths and open up some new doors?
That's a good question. What could you add to your talent stack?
Yeah. Something to think about.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of pushing boundaries and exceeding expectations, I was really drawn to Adam Koo's story. This guy was actually expelled from primary school,
Expelled. Wow.
and he really struggled with traditional learning. But guess what?
What?
He ended up becoming a successful entrepreneur and author.
No way. That's amazing. Talk about turning things around.
I know, right? It's a classic underdog story. And
Yeah.
what's so cool about it is how he learned to take the things that people saw as weaknesses and turn them into strengths.
Oh, that's interesting. So like he reframed his challenges.
Yeah, like he had a tough time with working memory, but that actually pushed him to become really good at simplifying complex ideas.
Oh, I see. So he turned a weakness into a strength.
Exactly. And he used his anxiety as motivation to be super prepared for everything.
That's clever. So instead of letting his anxiety paralyze him, he used it as fuel.
Exactly. And his stubbornness, well, that became this, like, unwavering determination.
It's amazing how he turned those challenges around. It's like our weaknesses can often be our greatest strengths in disguise if we just know how to look at them differently.
It's all about perspective.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder that our differences are often what make us special,
Absolutely. We shouldn't try to fit into some cookie-cutter mold. Embrace what makes you unique.
For sure. Now, I know you're a big neuroscience fan, so I'm curious to hear what you thought about the section on the brain and learning.
Oh, yeah, that was a fascinating part. It's so cool how they brought in insights from neuroscience, especially the work of Terence Sejnowski.
Sejnowski.
Yeah, he's the guy who co-created that super popular Learning How to Learn MOOC with Barbara Oakley.
Oh, I've heard of that one. It's supposed to be really good.
It is. It's really insightful. And Sejnowski's work is all about how our brains are wired for learning and how we can study more effectively.
Okay, cool. So what are some of the big takeaways from his research?
Well, one of the key things is understanding these two modes of thinking, focused and diffuse.
Focused and diffuse. What are those?
So focused mode is like when you're really concentrating on something, like reading a textbook or solving a math problem.
Okay.
Diffuse mode is when your mind is more relaxed and kind of wandering, like when you're taking a shower or going for a walk.
Oh, I see. So it's like when I'm trying to remember something
Yeah.
and I just can't get it, but then I go for a run and suddenly it pops into my head.
Exactly. It's like your brain is working on it in the background, even when you're not consciously thinking about it.
Hmm.
And both modes are super important for learning.
Okay, so you need both focused attention and those times when your mind is just kind of free-floating.
Yes. Focused mode helps you grasp those new concepts, but diffuse mode is when your brain makes connections and consolidates memories.
So, like, those breaks and downtime are actually a crucial part of learning. It's not just about go, go, go all the time.
Precisely. It's like giving your brain a chance to catch up and process everything. And here's a fun fact. Research suggests that even playing action-style video games can boost your cognitive skills.
Really, I always thought video games were like the enemy of learning.
Well, it turns out those fast-paced games can actually improve your attention, your working memory, and even your multitasking abilities.
Who knew? So maybe a little gaming isn't so bad after all.
In moderation, of course. But it just goes to show that even things that seem unproductive can actually have some surprising benefits for our brains.
So bottom line, we need to give our brains a break sometimes.
Definitely. Let those neurons do their thing.
Okay, good to know. Now, let's dive into a topic that I know a lot of people are excited about, MOOCs.
Ah, yes, MOOCs. They're revolutionizing education.
Right. It's amazing how they've made learning so accessible to anyone with an internet connection.
Totally. And the book is filled with these amazing stories about people who have used MOOCs to totally transform their lives.
Oh yeah, like who?
Well, there's Arnhem Raudeck, this software engineer who used MOOCs to become a woodworker.
Wow, what a change.
I know, right? And then there's Kashyap Tumkur, who used MOOCs to really deepen his knowledge in specific areas of software engineering. And there's Christian Artoni, who used MOOCs to grow both personally and professionally.
So there's really a MOOC out there for everyone.
Pretty much. It's amazing. What knowledge gaps or career aspirations do you think you could address through MOOCs?
That's a good question.
Have you ever taken an MOOC before?
I haven't, but I've heard so many good things about them.
No, you should definitely check them out. I took one a while back and I found it to be super engaging and enriching.
Really?
Yeah, it's a great way to learn new things.
Okay, I'm sold. I'm going to have to look into that.
You should.
So the book also goes behind the scenes of MOOC production, sharing Barbara Oakley's experience creating that learning how to learn MOOC with Terrence Sejnowski.
Yeah, that part was really interesting. It showed how much work goes into making a good MOOC.
I bet. What did they learn from that experience?
Well, they realized that visuals and humor and a really well-structured learning experience are super important. It's not enough to just, throw some information out there. You got to make it engaging.
Makes sense. People learn better when they're entertained, right?
Exactly. It's like, think about what works on TV and in movies. Those same principles can be applied to online learning.
That's a really good point. So what advice do they give for choosing a good MOOC?
They say to look for courses with clear visuals, motion, and humor.
So it's got to be visually appealing and fun.
Yeah, definitely.
It sounds like the instructor's personality is important too.
Absolutely. They emphasize the importance of having a friendly and upbeat instructor who can explain complex stuff in a way that's easy to understand.
Like someone you'd actually enjoy hanging out with.
Exactly. And don't forget to check out the online environment. A good MOOC will have active discussion forums and ways to interact with other students.
So it's like a little online community.
Yeah, kind of. And that can make a huge difference in how much you get out of the course.
I'm getting more and more intrigued by these MOOCs.
You should be. They're amazing.
Yeah, it really does. It's like you want a teacher who makes learning fun.
Yeah, for sure. And a well-designed MOOC can be like that too. It can, it can really spark that passion for learning something new.
It's incredible when you think about it, like how much access we have to information now compared to even just a few decades ago, right?
Oh, totally. The internet has totally revolutionized education.
Yeah. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Mindshift, I'm curious, what are some of the big takeaways for you? What really stuck with you?
Well, one thing that really resonated with me was this idea that it's never too late to learn and change, it's never too late to go after those dreams, no matter how old you are or what you've done in the past.
I love that. It's so empowering, right?
It really is. And the book, it doesn't just tell these inspiring stories. It also, gives us real practical advice based on neuroscience and psychology.
Right, like how our brains are actually wired to learn.
Exactly. So we can, learn how to learn more effectively.
Right. Like that whole thing about focused versus diffuse thinking and how important it is to take breaks.
Yeah. Those breaks are key. And the book also talks about this idea of developing a learning lifestyle.
A learning lifestyle.
Yeah, it's like this mindset, where you're always looking for opportunities to grow and you see challenges as, well, as chances to learn something new.
So it's not just about, like, formal education.
No, it can be, taking online courses or even just reading a book or having a conversation with someone who knows more than you about something. It's really about being curious and always wanting to learn more.
So it's like being a lifelong learner.
Exactly. It's about, constantly feeding your mind and expanding your horizons.
I think we could all benefit from that, no matter who we are or what we do.
Absolutely. So, as we, wrap up our exploration of Mindshift, I want to leave you with one last question to think about. How can you, take the things we've talked about today and actually use them to make a positive change in your own life? Like, what's one little thing you can do starting today to embrace this whole learning lifestyle thing and tap into your hidden potential?
Hmm. That's a great question. It's definitely got me thinking about what MOOCs I should check out. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
And to everyone listening, until next time, keep those minds shifting and those learning journeys going.